Packaged cut fruit, oyster, and sushi are foods you'll never catch me eating. I don't think many people should be eating them too. On this episode of Heal Thyself, I go over the major reasons why I stay away from these foods, how it can affect your health, and why you should consider reducing them or bringing them out of your diet overall. Check it out. All right, so different types of foods. Look, I eat a variety of foods, but I really do stay away from these foods. And I want to tell you, I'm not just being dramatic here. There's real reasons why. There's certain foods in medicine where you kind of know what's happening under the microscope, and then you sort of make a medical decision not to consume them. And I think a lot of doctors would agree with some, if not all, the ones that I mentioned. So let's start with cut fruit. It's particularly vulnerable to contamination because the protective skin in the peel is removed. And this is the actual barrier that's protecting the fruit from bacteria and mold and other contaminants. But I'm going to tell you why I would avoid them. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, about 48 million people in the U.S. get sick from foodborne illnesses every year, which is roughly like 1 in 6 people. And this includes illnesses from all foods, not just cut fruit. But cut fruit can be an issue. I've seen a lot of people, especially when I was in practice, get really poor quality, old, bacteria-ridden cut fruit and get really, really sick. And I want you to think about something. A stomach bug can just be a stomach bug, but a stomach bug can also trigger an immune reaction that leads to an autoimmune disease for people. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. So fresh produce, including cut fruit, it's been associated with about 46% of foodborne illnesses in the United States, almost half. And the figure includes like fruits and leafy greens and other vegetables, but it's a big one, right? And some of these illnesses are linked to improper washing, handling, and storage. We know that the people who are handling it and the surfaces of the preparation, if they don't wash their hands, or the cutting surfaces which they're cut on, like either with the knives or the cutting boards, if they're poorly sanitized, bacteria can transfer easily into the fruit. And there's no way of really ensuring what their kitchen equipment is before it gets into the plastic, before it gets onto the shelf. On top of that, there's also airborne contaminants. Once fruit is cut, it's exposed. And it's a different game. It makes it susceptible to airborne pathogens, dust, and spores. Fresh raw cut fruit can also be cross-contaminated. Cut fruit, it's prepared near raw meats and seafoods and other foods that carry pathogens. It can be cross-contaminated. And this is particularly dangerous for fruits, right? Like, especially if we're consuming them raw, because we ain't cooking our fruits, right? I don't know anyone that is, but that's a problem, right? And there's different types of pathogens. When we think about bacteria and what's in the fruit, we immediately think of E. coli. We immediately think of salmonella. We can even think of listeria. These are all pathogens that are found in cut fruit that come from unwashed hands, dirty surfaces. Even within the fruit, if it's contaminated already earlier than the supply chain, or even if the fruit is contaminated earlier than that supply chain, if it was in farming or transportation, it also can be found to contain mold and yeast, especially developing on cut fruit, especially if it's stored in moist or warm environments. And these mold spores can be really problematic to you and your children. We can't always really ensure the sensitivity of the handling and the packing, the temperature, right? Cut fruit left at room temperature for more than 2 hours is already an environment, especially if it's over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, an environment for growing these bacteria. So we can't ensure how they're refrigerating them, how long they're refrigerating it. We know that there's high water content in these fruits, already breeding ground for bacteria, especially if they're high-risk fruits, right? I absolutely would stay away from fresh cut, packaged melon or cantaloupe or watermelon. They come with a rough outer surface, right? When you think about these, and that's protective. But when it's cut and it's exposed and it's wet, it can become slimy and the bacteria can actually get into the skin. Listeria is really one of the biggest concerns for the melons, and that can make us really, really sick. Then there's berries, right? Strawberries, raspberries. They're delicate. They have porous surfaces. It can easily make it for bacteria to multiply. You just want to think about, is this packaged fruit in front of me cut by someone else, or is it cut by me? Because when you become sick from packaged fruit, it's nasty. It's nausea, it's vomiting, it's diarrhea, it's abdominal cramps, it's fever, it's dehydration for some people. In vulnerable populations, you want to make sure that you're protecting children, elderly, pregnant women, anyone with a weakened immune system. I mentioned listeria before. That can be potentially life-threatening for people. And that can be muscle aches, fever, and severe cases, meningitis, right? There can even be miscarriages in pregnant women. So we want to make sure that if we are cutting fruit ourselves, we always practice really good hygiene with our hands, our utensils, and the surfaces. Make sure you're washing the fruit. Even scrubbing firm fruits like melons with a brush can help remove bacteria from the surface. And theoretically, a knife can be picking up bacteria as it goes through the skin into the fruit itself. You want to store fruit in a clean, airtight container in a refrigerator and consume it within a few days. Do not leave it for a long time in there. Keep fresh fruit away from meats and seafoods, anything that can contaminate it or cause cross-contamination. Number 2, oh man, you won't see me eating oysters. That can pose a multitude of risks. It is one of the foods that I know many doctors stay away from. And why? It's bacterial contamination, of course. But there's one bacteria coming from oysters that is really problematic. It's called Vibrio. It's one of the biggest health risks of eating raw, undercooked oysters. And this contamination with Vibrio can be problematic. These bacteria are naturally inhabiting the coastal waters and can be found in high concentrations in the warmer months. But Vibrio infections from eating raw oysters are not extremely common, but when you're hit with Vibrio infection, it can be pretty severe. According to the CDC, approximately 80,000 Vibrio infections occur each year within the United States, and about 52,000 come from eating contaminated seafood like oysters. Although it's less than 1% of the people who eat oysters, I wanted to speak about Vibrio because it's a problem. It can make you really, really sick. Now, today I want to chat about something that's been a crucial part of my daily routine. That is omega-3s. I take them every day. They're batched up with my supplements. And specifically, I take Peori's O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil. Omega-3s actually help increase your muscle mass and function, especially as we age. Remember, at the age of 30 and over, we start losing that muscle mass. But research suggests that omega-3s can actually enhance muscle protein synthesis and improve our body's response to exercise. But here's the thing, not all omega-3 supplements are created equal. That's why I'm so impressed with Peori. They only use small fish, which tend to have lower levels of contaminants. And get this, each batch is certified clean by the Clean Label Project and tested against over 200 contaminants. And what I love about Peori's O3 is that it offers a high dose of 2,000 milligrams of long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA in its natural form. And since I've been taking Peori's O3, I've noticed my improvements in my recovery after workouts, and not just supporting my heart and my brain and my eyes. It's also becoming an essential part of my fitness routine too. Now, I know supplements can be confusing and sometimes even concerning, but with Peori, you get the potency and the peace of mind that you need. It's a brand that you can trust. And here's some exciting news for you, the Heal Thyself listener. Peori is offering you a 20% off of the O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil and all of their other great products. Go to peori.com/DRG and use the promo code DRG. That is PUORI.com/DRG. And use the code DRG. You get 20% off. Thank you, Peori. You already know, I'm always looking for ways to make staying healthy easier. And one thing I've been focusing a lot on is water quality. Actually, it's been one of the first things that I've ever focused on. It was my first post ever. And 3 out of 4 homes in America actually have harmful contaminants in their tap water. Anytime someone says tap is great and like here in New York, we have the best tap. No, tap water is not great. You should be staying away from it as much as possible. And that's why I tell you about AquaTrue. These water purifiers have been game changers in my home. They use an impressive 4-stage reverse osmosis process that removes 15 times more contaminants than your typical water filter. And get this, the countertop models don't even need any insulation or plumbing. It's perfect if you're renting or just don't want to deal with any complicated setups. And what really stands out for me is how AquaTrue tackles those nasty PFAS. You know, the forever chemicals, right? We've been hearing about. They found in almost half United States tap water and long-term exposure, and it can lead to some serious health issues. But AquaTrue is certified to remove these contaminants, which gives me a real peace of mind. And let me tell you, the difference in taste is incredible. The best part, the filters last a long time. We're talking about 6 months to 2 years, depending on the model. It's way more affordable than bottled water in the long run, and you're not creating all that plastic waste. If you're looking to upgrade your water quality and take a simple step towards better health, I can't recommend AquaTrue enough. And here's some great news for you, the Heal Thyself listener. You can get 20% off of any AquaTrue purifier right now. Just go to aquatrue.com/DRG. That is AQUATRU.com/DRG to get yourself a top quality elite water pitcher. One particular type of Vibrio infection called Vibrio vulnifugus causes about 100 cases of illness in the United States annually, but actually has a really high fatality rate with about 1 in 5 people dying from this infection. So although it's rare, if you get this infection coming from oysters, it can kill you. To a lesser extent, you can get vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, fever, but in some cases with people who have a weakened immune system, that bacteria can go into the bloodstream, and that's what really causes that sickness into death. Oysters can also carry norovirus, super contagious, can lead to a lot of gastrointestinal illness, everything that you think of for food poisoning within 24 to 40 hours. It can also pass hepatitis A because the oysters harvested from contaminated waters carry hepatitis A virus, and that can infect the liver and can cause a multitude of issues like jaundice, fatigue, abdominal pain, nausea. Although it's rare, it can actually result in severe liver damage for some people. But not only that, oysters can carry heavy metals. They can accumulate mercury, lead, cadmium because of polluted waters. And chronic exposure to these metals can lead to many issues, including brain, heart, lungs, nervous system. Every system that you have will be affected by heavy metals. On top of that, oysters can contain biotoxins. Certain harmful algae produce toxins that oysters can filter from the water. And these toxins can't be destroyed by cooking. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm not going to eat raw oysters, but I'll cook them. But actually consuming contaminated oysters can lead to shellfish poisoning, and it can manifest in many different ways. There's something called paralytic shellfish poisoning. It can cause numbness and tingling, severe paralysis. There's amnesic shellfish poisoning. It can cause GI symptoms and memory loss and brain damage. There's neurotoxic shellfish poisoning, which leads to neurological issues like dizziness, confusion, and sometimes gastrointestinal issues. So if you have a weakened immune system, if you have liver disease, if you have HIV, if you're pregnant, if you're a child, if you're elderly, I would actually stay away for sure from oysters. Even if you are healthy, I would actually think twice before eating oysters. And one of the last ones I want to talk about that might be the biggest bummer of all for a lot of you is sushi. If you eat fish, if you eat sashimi, nigiri, carpaccio, whatever raw stuff, it doesn't have to just be fish, you got to listen to this. You might want to think about taking raw fish, sushi, or sashimi out of your diet. I did many stories around this, and I spoke about parasites in sushi and many times in stories, and it grew, it blew up, right? People were just like sending it to each other. But if you eat sushi, if you ever eaten sushi, you got to listen to this part. I really want to talk about how eating raw fish, like just one has boomed in the United States, but really want to talk about parasites in raw fish. Actually, the market size for sushi has grown. Back in 2012, the US sector was $17 billion. Now it's up to $24 billion where people are just spending and eating fish. We love raw fish. Sushi used to be one of my favorite things in college, right? I used to go out all the time, and that was what I did for dates, right? Let's go get some sushi. But I didn't know about parasites. And parasites are actually organisms that can affect us by living within us. And they utilize our nutrients, as you know, parasite. And they can cause a multitude of diseases in us humans. And it can be passed on not just from sushi, but bug bites, from waste and soil, contaminated water. But yeah, it can live in sushi. And these parasites evade our immune system. They lay eggs within us, and they stay in our systems for weeks up to years. And in developing countries, really like 30 to 60% of people will be infected with parasites. It's harder to find the number here, but it's going to be less. But maybe I could be wrong, especially with how much we love sushi. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the infection in fish increasing. It's different. It's not how it was before. There's actually a meta-analysis out of University of Washington, and it was called A Wormy World. It was published in Global Change Biology Journal, and they analyzed 123 papers published between 1967 and 2017. And it tracked the long-term changes in the abundance of specific aquatic parasites. One of them is called Anisakis, aka the herringworm, and it's a nematode, and it causes many issues, especially gastrointestinal, like food poisoning. And they saw a change of 283-fold increase from 1978 to 2015. It was primarily found in Japan, but since the boom of sushi, it's been found in many cases throughout the United States and South America. So why did this parasite in the waters boom? It's most likely due to climate change or fertilizers or runoff, and just the increase in water mammals, more feces, more parasite, better parasite life cycles. But regardless, it's transmitted. And that's the point. We just want to, we need to understand that like there's an increase in parasites, there's an increase in fish consumption, and inevitably there'll be an increase in us being infected with parasites. And then there's a tapeworm. They grow about 12 to 15 centimeters per day. It's a large parasite we found in humans, and it can stay in the host for many, many years. So I really want you to think about, before we even go into like how to eat sushi, if you do, I really want you to think about, if you hear these symptoms, doesn't mean you have parasites, but it also means, hey, there might be a little exclamation mark over your head and you might want to talk to your doctor soon, right? So really, when someone has parasites, they're going to start experiencing mild symptoms first, like fatigue, constipation, abdominal discomfort. Labs, they'll look normal. Maybe you see a little bit lower B12, maybe some anemia. But it's just an overall, I don't feel good. My gut doesn't feel good. And it's because the worm would be in the upper intestine and is really eating up a lot of that B12 that you need for energy and survival. But as the parasite stays longer and longer, you're going to feel more and more depleted. Then you're going to have symptoms of nutrient depletion. So whatever nutrient it's depleting, you're going to start manifesting, right? So it can be anything from poor skin and hair loss, poor mitochondrial function. You'll have really poor energy. And pretty much everyone who has a parasite is going to have some sort of gastrointestinal issue. So anything from bloating and diarrhea, constipation, heartburn, just not feeling good with your guts, right? Every time I eat, just there's a problem. You might want to start thinking about this. All fish are subject to parasitic infection, right? Of course, it's going to be higher when you eat raw fish. And even there's a risk when you eat cooked fish. It's got to be cooked right. Salmon is a commonly infected fish, unfortunately, because a lot of people eat salmon. But you want to make sure when you cook fish, it's at 55 degrees Celsius, 131 degrees Fahrenheit for about 5 minutes, and you'll be killing parasite larvae. But if you go to a place that is serving you sushi and you're not going to give it up, then you have to make sure it is being handled properly. It has to come frozen at negative 20 degrees Celsius or negative 68 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 7 days. If they're flash freezing at negative 95 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 hours, you want to make sure that it is frozen. But the flesh has to be less than 15 centimeters thick. That's the standard for public health. But you have to check with your restaurant. You have to talk to them if they're willing to even tell you. Look, I'm not trying to avoid you or scare you with this stuff. I just want to bring to your awareness what is out there, right? Like, we've normalized eating these foods, and great, they're like convenient, or sometimes they're part of like a celebration or just a nice date dinner. But like, just take a moment. Like, if there's other things on the menu, you may not always want to go for the oysters or the sushi, or you may not always want to go for the cut fruit on your lunch break. Maybe, just maybe, you look for another option, right? And maybe if your immune system is poor, or you're pregnant for sure, or you have kids, you have elderly parents, this might be things you want to stay away from, okay? So I just want to bring that to light for everyone. Not here to scare anyone, but really to tell you what I stay away from, and hopefully that brings awareness to you. Live your life, enjoy your food, enjoy your life, but also just be conscious. I love you all. Thank you for joining the show. Heal Thyself.